Good day. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. Welcome to The Pipeline. Today is May 12th, 2021. We've got a great show for you today. I'm joined in the studio by Western Standard Alberta political columnist and host of the Corey Morgan Show, none other than Corey Morgan. Good day, Corey.
Good day.
And Dave Naylor, news editor of the Western Standard, coming to us from beautiful British Columbia. We'll be returning back to the Western Standard mothership in downtown Calgary very soon. I think next week we'll have you back on the show from here. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good. I've almost served my time, Derek. Heading home.
Well, we miss you in Wild Rose Country. Before we get started, we want to thank all of our members for your fantastic support. I keep on saying how great the support level we've received is, and it just keeps getting better. We've had just hundreds and hundreds of new members over the last week. We're extremely grateful for your support. If you support what we're doing, if you support bailout-free, non-government funded media dedicated to Western Canada, please consider becoming a member. Go to westernstandardonline.com/membership. Try a 15-day free trial. See if you like it. And you can become a member for either on a month-to-month basis for $10 a month, or become an annual, just subscribe annually for a membership at $99 a year. Well, let's dive straight into it. Very crazy weekend. The Alberta government cracking down hard. Now saying that scofflaws that do not respect the lockdown, even for such thing as your charter protected right to free speech and free assembly, will not be accepted. So, Dave, why don't you, I guess there's been quite a bit of it here. There's arrests and fines galore. We've had Pastor Arthur Pawlowski arrested in Calgary. We've had the Whistle Stop owner, Chris Scott, arrested, and Ty Northcott, the organizer of the Rogue Rodeo in Bowden, all either arrested or facing summons. Dave, rather than us going through each one altogether, maybe we'll just package this crackdown altogether. Why don't you set it up for us?
Yeah, it's been a busy week for the Alberta authorities, Derek. As you mentioned, started a couple of weeks ago with the No More Lockdowns Rodeo. That drew 4,000 people to Bowden. The next week, the RCMP descended twice on Chris Scott's Whistle Stop Cafe in small-town rural Mirror, Alberta. The first time they took away all his booze. It was like a scene from the Prohibition. A couple days later, they arrived at dawn and padlocked his house. People were angry about that. They decided they were going to hold a protest that weekend on the grounds of the Whistle Stop Cafe. Alberta government wanted to get out in front of that, so they went to the Court of Queen's Bench in Edmonton, and a justice there issued an injunction saying the upcoming event at the Mirror Cafe would be illegal, and in fact all events in Alberta would be illegal. Organizers faced immediate arrest, and so the warning shot was given. Didn't stop 1,500 people from showing up in Mirror on Saturday for a full day protest. At the end of the day, once everybody had left and went home, RCMP put handcuffs on Chris Scott, the organizer and owner of the Whistle Stop. A couple hours before that, Arthur Pawlowski, Calgary pastor who's been a thorn in the side of authorities since day one. He kept holding packed church services. He was taken out of his car in the middle of 17th Avenue. Police waited until after he drove away from his church, so there was nobody around in terms of followers. They got him out of his vehicle. He knelt in the middle of busy 17th Avenue. They handcuffed him, and he refused to stand to walk to the police car. He said, "Do it the Nazi way." And so they did. They dragged him, feet trailing on the road. So, and then just on Monday, the organizer of the No More Lockdowns Rodeo, rancher Ty Northcott, he received a visit from the RCMP, and he and his wife were charged under Public Health Act, as was the rodeo itself, Northcott Rodeo. So they've got a court date later on this month. So lots of people rounded up, and the crackdown that was promised has finally arrived, Derek.
Well, it does seem to be here. I've said this before. I'll say it again. If you want to know what Jason Kenney is going to do a week from now, listen to what Rachel Notley is saying today. Rachel Notley was demanding that the province crack down and start more rigorous enforcement of the cabinet orders surrounding lockdowns and bans on protests, things like that. We saw an unprecedented ex parte court injunction against the protest at the Whistle Stop, again, on private property. I have never in my life ever heard of a protest or demonstration being banned on private property where the private property owner is welcoming it to happen. I've never heard about that in the history of Canada. Maybe it's happened at some point during a world war when governments are also a bit more loosey-goosey with our civil liberties, but the Alberta government does seem now hell-bent on trying to regain its power here. People are questioning the very right of government to do things right now. Most of the time in Canada, when we're debating, when we're having a debate on any of these kinds of issues, it's a debate on should government do something, not does government have any legitimate right to do this. And so I think a lot of people, myself included, question the very legitimacy of the government to do these things when they're taking actions that flagrantly violates basic liberties and the Constitution, as I see it at least. Why do you think the government is cracking down so hard right now, Corey?
Simply because they got to look like they're doing something. Everybody's screaming, do something, do something, do something. I blame part of it on our Canadian, unfortunately, attitude of we feel the state has to protect us from everything. They have the power. It's almost this childlike dream, thinking the state can do something about it. Like that's the problem. So infections are going up. Of course, the media is reporting, the most haywire statistics to make it look like the world is coming to an end and forgetting to report that virtually nobody's dying from COVID anymore. Yet it's raised panic and it's raised fear and people are legitimately scared. So, I can't imagine what the inboxes are for the politicians, for their aides, everybody else is coming in from people saying, heavens, do something. So he's come in and he's done something. Whether it's going to have any impact, no. It's had a huge impact on our civil rights. We're seeing, so keep this in mind and let's record this right now. The infections even were plateauing before these restrictions, the latest ones came in. So before you start giving them credit for this thing starting to plateau and go down, it was happening before we shut down all the restaurants and everything else. Jason Kenney bristled quite a bit about that when he was asked about it at yesterday's press conference, actually. They're desperate, I think. They just have to look like they're doing something. And I think the fact that they do it kind of so grudgingly is that they know it's not going to be of much effect, but they're doing it for political reasons rather than real ones.
Yeah. They know that, this is kind of a good segue into probably our next segment. They know this is not actually doing anything. It's just a matter of maintaining perception. They know this is not going to increase compliance. Lockdowns are only effective if you've got about 99% plus of the population voluntarily taking part in it. If you've got even 5 or 10%, then they're useless already. But when you've got, I chance to say 40% actively hostile and disobeying, leave Calgary and Edmonton, pretty much no one's wearing a mask unless they're actually at risk and it might actually be helpful for them. Everybody's having people over to their home who they're not legally allowed to have over to their home. You've got probably 40% actively resisting and probably another 20% that just don't really care anymore, but they're not going to make a stink about it. So you've got, there really is no way to enforce compliance. Like, there's not enough police on the planet to stand inside every home and force us at gunpoint to comply. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, well, those of us remember that the first real lockdown was last spring when everybody was scared. We didn't know. We thought this could be something really horrible coming. And it was horrible, but it was nothing like we were warned. There was none of the 30,000 people dead or any of that. But the streets back then were ghostly. You would go out and the traffic on a weekday, midday was empty. Go outside today. Come on. It looks barely any different than it does any other day, except for all the out of business signs on all the restaurants and stores as you drive down the streets. But otherwise, people are out, they're visiting, they're interacting. Again, the impacts of these restrictions are negligible.
Yeah. Well, let's. I think that's a good segue to our next topic. Dave, you've made some annoying phone calls to Alberta Health Services. That is the agency that is a part of the Alberta government, reporting to the Minister of Health. That's largely spearheading much of the crackdown here. They're the one who applied for the injunction to ban the protest in Mirror, Alberta, and other protests around Alberta. But you've got they've come back and said, quite grudgingly, I think, but admitted that there has been no COVID-19 cases linked to the Rogue Rodeo in Bowden. Why don't you tell us about what it is you found out from them, and what maybe elaborate on what it is they said?
Yeah, the AHS banned large gatherings because they feared super spreader events. That where everybody's at close quarters and it would spread like wildfire. There are 4,000 people at the Bowden Rodeo, the No More Lockdowns Rodeo, over 2 days. I wasn't there, you guys were, but I don't think there were too many masks being worn there. But when we checked with AHS yesterday, 10 days after the event, 9 days after the event, they said there has been no cases yet linked to those 4,000 people. But, and they did say a but, there's no reason that there couldn't have been asymptomatic people going around infecting everybody and not knowing it. And they say that for the most part, the COVID virus takes about 14 days to percolate through the system and before you're becoming sick. So they've grudgingly admitted it's a big zero at the moment, Derek. But they keep throwing out these buts. It could happen, but this, but that. But at the moment, it's 0 cases linked to the rodeo.
Well, that's not quite the super spreader event that they were saying. I remember you had Ryan Jesperson, people on the CBC, the politicians, saying that everybody who went, which I suppose includes you and I, Corey, are murderers. We have blood on our hands. Oh. You had Drew Farrell, a city councillor in Calgary, trying to see if it was possible to charge people with manslaughter for these events. Absolutely wild stuff. Turns out it was just a rodeo.
Yeah, my pillow was tear-stained with knowing I was such a murderous, terrible person that night. But
how can you live with Drew Farrell thinking that about you?
I try not to think of Drew thinking about me.
Yeah. So as you said, Dave, there was nary a mask in sight. I think I saw 1 or 2 people wearing them, and that's their choice. They decided they're on private property, and they decided as free people that they wanted to attend, but that they were gonna wear a mask, and that was fine. But other than them, the only people I saw wearing masks were not actually there. They were CBC and CTV camera crews standing in the ditch without another human within 500 meters of them. I don't know if they thought they were going to get COVID from the cows. I don't know how they thought they were going to get infected, but everybody's sitting around there. I mean, I suppose we could still have a case emerge from it, but at this point, there does not appear to be a single case linked to it. Seems it was fair. I was talking with Kelly Kryman. She's a correspondent at the Globe and Mail, and I talked about this should be about everyone's own individual risk tolerance. We shouldn't be irresponsible. We shouldn't do something that is likely to get you infected, but you have to have a risk tolerance if you're going to live your life with any sense of normality. What I said was, look, if that rodeo was indoors, that probably would have been beyond my own risk tolerance. I would have supported the right of others to go to it, but it would have been beyond my risk tolerance. But outdoors, it seemed perfectly fine to me. Dave, have we heard anything from Jason Kenney, Rachel Notley, or Dina Hinshaw yet about this super spreader rodeo?
No, you've just had the Jason Kenney comments to his caucus the day, the Sunday that the rodeo event wrapped up. The famous "I want a new base" comments. Rachel Notley was jumping over herself in glee when the arrest started happening on the weekend. She was praising it and saying it's about time. And Dina Hinshaw's been fairly quiet, mainly because the mainstream media who get to ask questions at these things haven't asked her about it yet. But we'll continue to try, Derek.
Well, I know that Jason Kenney has never taken a question of yours at a press conference, but if you do manage to get a question in the somewhat near future, Dave, let's make sure you ask him if he has anything to say to the people that he called disturbing, selfish, and several other schoolyard names that he called the people who attended in light of there being no infections. And I will state for the record here now that if infections are in fact confirmed to be linked to the rodeo, we will talk about this, even though this is something I know that maybe doesn't fit with what I want to be the case. I want, it's in the Western Standards mission statement that we will tell the truth even when it hurts. And that would be truth that hurts. It's not something that I want to be in the news, but if there is a COVID case that is linked to the rodeo, we will talk about it. Unlike our government-funded competitors who have utterly ignored, 100% ignored AHS statements now that we've put this story out there, that there's been no cases linked to this. Maybe they will pick it up at some point. I'm not too optimistic.
No, well, and I won't go as far as Minister Maddow said the other day, but I think there was a lot of people who wouldn't have been too sad if it had turned into a super spreader event. They wanted something to point to.
They wanted to say, "I told you so."
And I'm not saying they're really wishing death on people, but they wanted to say, "See, these guys were irresponsible, and there's a price." So rest assured, if there's anything that could link to it, we would be hearing about it, not just from us, but from everybody else. But you know what? I'm trying to think of any outdoor event that turned into a super spreader one that all the the doomsayers freaked out and said would happen. I mean, remember Sylvan Lake last summer when people went out and Notley was again doing cartwheels. I mean, her hair was standing on end almost. Oh my God, there's going to be a super. It didn't happen. We saw that with Super Bowl. It didn't happen. We saw 40,000 people at a Texan baseball game. It didn't happen. These outdoor super spreaders don't happen. And that's part of what some people are almost disappointed with. Not so much, they didn't hate the rodeo so much that they feared people would be harmed, but that they would be proven wrong again.
One of the stories I did this week, guys, was comparing Alberta to Texas and how Texas is now wide open and their infections are dropping drastically, as are their hospitalizations and death rates. I note on the weekend, on Saturday, the house that Jerry Jones built, the stadium there in near Dallas, 70,000 people crammed into it for a World Championship boxing match, and nary a COVID case out of that so far.
Well, speaking of, I think the need for media to tell the truth and actually speak up on issues, regardless of what government wants us to do. I like a good segue. That's, I think, a decent segue into Bill C-10. Bill C-10 is it's a bill put forward by the federal Liberal government under Trudeau, but it's being pushed forward by Minister Gibault. I think he's from Montreal. He is the Heritage Minister, and this bill, I think many of our listeners have probably already heard of this bill. It is seeking to regulate digital broadcasting under the CRTC, the Canadian Radio Television Commission, if I got that right. Bring it under the CRTC and start regulating it as terribly as we're already regulating television and radio. To start treating them like that. He's saying, "Oh, this is just about Canadian content and blah blah blah." I mean, that's ridiculous in and of itself. If something's good, we're going to listen to it. If it's crappy, well, you can listen to it on the CBC. We don't need Canadian content rules. Canada's produced a lot of great artists and not too many great shows actually. We've had the odd one that's done well.
It's been some. Schitt's Creek was outstanding.
Schitt's Creek was great. Trailer Park Boys. It's my cup of tea. Maybe not yours.
But there's some talented people who would have made those things without
Yeah,
that's a bigger discussion. But we have talent. We don't need the government to protect us.
But the concern now is that this bill is quite explicitly going to regulate social media accounts. So if you're, they've kind of waffled back and forth through committees and whatnot and different amendments, but essentially the bill as it stands now is going to directly regulate not just digital broadcasters like the Western Standard that don't do formal television cable. We don't do radio. We don't do that. I made a conscious decision. I've had a lot of people try to approach us about maybe investing in that area, and I've said no. I will never work in a regulated industry under something like the CRTC as long as I own the am a owner of the Western Standard. It's not happening. But now they're going to start regulating things like the Western Standard, since we're a company, and even individuals who aren't a company, but they just happen to have a lot of subscribers on YouTube or a lot of likes on Facebook. It's madness. But this bill has attracted a lot of attention. The minister, Jabot, says, I never know if I'm pronouncing that name right. That's a tough one. But let's call him Jabot. He has said that the whole controversy about this is a conspiracy of big corporate interests. That's quite bizarre, since it's actually the big corporate interests that are already regulated by the CRTC, the Rogers, the Shaws, the Teluses, CBC, CTV, all of these big conglomerates. They're the ones who actually want this to happen because they don't like their competitors being out there unregulated. Dave, why don't you tell us if I've missed any background on this bill and what it means, and why don't you tell us where it's at now that it's hit a snag in the committee?
Yeah, you know what, Derek? I'm as confused as you are. I'm as confused as every Canadian is what exactly is going on here. Minister Guilbeault appears on the weekend talk shows, and he's so confusing. Even the talk show hosts don't know what he's talking about. But what he did say this last weekend was that if you've got a popular internet channel, popular YouTube or popular Facebook account, like Corey, I guess, you could face regulation. You could face censorship. So I think we are starting to see a bit of a backlash from the public. Former colleague of mine, former head of the CRTC, Peter Menzies, has been very vocal in terms of saying that this is absolutely outrageous, and Canadians as a whole need to rise up. MPs are getting thousands of letters a day through lobby groups and whatnot. So where it's at on the committee level is the committee this week has voted to bring the whole thing to a halt. Even Liberals on the committee, sort of realizing the way the wind is blowing, have stopped it, and they are going to bring in their lawyers, all the federal lawyers, Department of Justice lawyers, and ask them if it is in breach of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And that's what the entire argument of the opposition has been, that if you censor Corey Morgan, you are breaching his rights and freedoms. So the bill has now been stopped. The lawyers are going to be coming. The Attorney General of Canada will be called towards the committee. Minister Guilbeault himself will have to go and ask questions. So it's a very concerning law that I think all Canadians need to be worried about, because once you start letting the government do some censorship, you just never know where it's going to end up, Derek.
Corey, I want to ask you why you think they're doing this. I can see the Liberals; they are obsessed with this heritage thing. I mean, Jabot's from Quebec, and if media in Quebec is not receiving subsidies and regulatory favoritism, then it pretty much doesn't exist in Quebec. Quebec media doesn't exist without government support, and particularly federal government support. That's not the case in English Canada. I mean, like, we're obviously making a go at it here, not just unregulated, but without subsidies, period. So I can see him maybe wanting to, despite his rhetoric saying that it's the big corporate guys who are against this, we know for a fact that they're, for the most part, in support of it. So he might be trying to regulate internet broadcasters like ourselves as a part of that. Why do you think what would be their reasoning for wanting to regulate? I mean, if you stop with us tomorrow and you just did your own thing on YouTube, Why would he care about you?
It's control. The bottom line is it's control. Authoritarians want to have control on information that's going out, and it's funny because the bill started. I mean, it's odious right from day one. It's a terrible control bill, but they got greedy, and it showed because it really didn't hit the fan until that amendment recently when they broadened it. I mean, it was already ugly enough, and one of the Liberal MPs in the committee amended it to say that's going to include individual broadcasters, yes, like myself, like people who do workout videos, like any internet influencer. I think that's part of the term they don't like. It's influencer because these people are influencing minds. They're influencing thoughts. They're breaking stories. They're getting stuff out that, as we've seen with the government-controlled media, I'm not saying it's a giant conspiracy that totally clamps down on the media, but it makes them less inclined to cover some stories than others. And if they can keep that tamped down, they will do so. Government likes to have their fingers in and on everything. And, some of it might be a bit well-meaning where they have this distorted idea that the state will maintain cultural preservation and language, which, again, is wrong. But a lot of them, I think it's just a matter of they don't like the messaging getting out there outside of their control. And the more they can do so, the more they will do so.
Well, we're actually quite pressed for time here. We have some technical issues in the background, so we're actually going to switch right away to our final segment here. Will the Eastern Bastards actually freeze in the dark? This is the second time we've been able to play with that headline at the Western Standard. I remember when we had the rail strike in, I think, November of 2019. The Western Standard, that was our Western Standard's first full month. We were brand new, and we had all sorts of interesting stories coming out. And I wrote a column, will the Eastern Bastards actually freeze in the dark? And I apologize to our Eastern viewers. Most of you are not bastards, just the people you elect. But we're now looking at Line 5, which supplies about half of the petroleum products to Eastern Canada. Yes, the East gets a lot of foreign oil, but most of the oil that they don't get from Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Russia, places, Venezuela, places like this, comes through Line 5. And Democratic Michigan Governor, her name escapes me,
Gretchen
Whitmer. She is just about to flip the switch and turn this pipeline off. I gotta say, of all the pipeline cancellations that we've faced in the last decade, I'm the least sad about this one. If nothing else, I hope, not that I'm terribly optimistic, but it's our best hope of helping the East understand that you need oil and gas, and you need it from us. We are the reliable source, and when you let foreign entities get in the way, you're jeopardized in that. Dave, real quick, since we don't have a lot of time, give us a rundown of what's happening with Line 5, and do we expect the Easterners to freeze in the dark?
Too early to tell, Derek. We're talking about a 6.4 kilometer section of pipeline that was granted 67 years ago under the Straits of Mechanic. As you mentioned, the governor in November gave Enbridge a shutdown order that it has to be closed down by today. The feds filed court papers yesterday saying all the reasons why they didn't. They're currently still in mediation at the moment. And Seamus O'Regan, the Natural Resources Minister, says he's hopeful that things will come to a good conclusion. He says he's not just representing, he's representing Alberta, Ontario, everybody in Quebec down east, because all of the oil going into Sarnia comes from that pipeline. So it would really be a huge impact on the eastern provinces if it does get shut down. But Whitmer today put Enbridge on notice that any oil going through the pipeline tomorrow, she will consider hers, Michigan's property, and they will take the profits from it. So going to be interesting, Derek.
Yeah. So one of our commenters said that the plan of Enbridge is now to ship the oil by tanker through the Great Lakes. Have you heard anything about that, Dave?
There's several ways they can go. Rail would seem to be the quickest and most convenient.
I'm sure farmers will love that, having more rail capacity taken over by oil.
I'm not sure there's the tanker availability in the Great Lakes, to be honest with you, to keep that level of oil going. But hopefully, the courts in the States move pretty quickly. Hopefully before the end of the week, we'll get a certain resolution anyways, and I'm sure will be appealed and appealed and appealed. So it's basically status quo with threats going on either side at the moment.
Corey, I don't know if you have any strong opinions about this. There was something called Energy East that was being proposed. The federal government effectively killed it. I know the Alberta government at the time under Rachel Notley said pretty much nothing about it when it was killed. And federal conservative leader Aaron O'Toole has said that Energy East is a no-go if the Quebec government doesn't agree to it. So he's effectively agreed that Quebec gets a veto.
Agreed that our constitution doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So, in light of all of that, this might be a loaded question, but I actually mean in all seriousness. Should the Eastern Bastards freeze in the dark?
Yes. I'll go straight to it. Look, we've been screaming this from out here. I mean, prior to Energy East. I mean, a term that I hope that starts to come on the lips of Central Canadians who vote in these guys. Energy security. Think about it, you clowns. Windmills aren't going to do it. You can't dam any more rivers. You can't build the nuke plants that fast. You need this stuff. You need it. And you're finally going to feel it. And I don't, we started by warning. We started in November. We were shouting this. She's serious about this. People said, no, she's not. Don't worry about it. She was serious about it. Look at it today. There's a line drawn in the sand. The environmentalists are lining up behind her. She is allied with Joe Biden. She is now going to try and seize assets from a legally operating company to shut this thing down. It wasn't a bluff. Our clown-shoed prime minister has had 6 months to work on this, and he's acting like it snuck up on him. So you know what? It's gone beyond the point of warning to try and prevent an event happening. And now I'm thinking, you know what? Let it happen because some people need a reality check. Shut it down for just a month. Let the price spikes happen.
But it's not January.
Yeah. We're not going to kill people, though, because propane, I mean, all these things that have to be shipped. Pearson International gets all of their jet fuel from there. And hey, I don't mind if nobody goes to Toronto.
We're not going to get to go to Toronto.
But I mean, you need this taste of it. You can't fly a plane with a windmill, you guys. You can't.
Gliders.
Yeah.
We need gliders. That's wind-powered planes.
I mean, maybe people should be building fireplaces for this winter because if you can't get propane by then, you're going to be up the creek. And it will be around, but it'll only be the rich who are getting it. So welcome to the realities of choking your market ability, and that you have. And as you said, we had the means. We had Energy East. If we had a diverse number of clients and outlets for our product, I don't think Whitmer would have pulled this crap because she knows she's got us by the short and curlies because we've let ourselves get like that. So I'm looking forward to
that. May have been the first appearance of the term short and curlies on this show. I'm sure it is not the last. I mean, if anyone here is listening or watching from the East, I recommend you buy every jerry can you have, fill it with gas, fill it with oil, go and fill up your propane, there should be a run on oil and gas in Ontario and Quebec right now. People should be hoarding this. I would put a lock on the fuel door in my car because people should be siphoning it out, stealing it. It's going to be like water in the desert there very soon. Quite potentially. Looks like it will be, but not yet 100%. But it looks like it will be. Let's see if the East wakes up a bit. Maybe they'll say the answer is just import more oil from Saudi Arabia. But at the very, very least, you're going to see a huge spike in your prices at the pump. Hope you enjoy it. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. This was a fun show. Sorry, so we had to cut it a little short, but hey, we had other things to do here, so that's good. I want to thank all of our Western Standard members again. If you're liking what you're reading, liking what you're listening or watching, please consider becoming a member. Go to westernstandardonline.com/membership. Try it free for 15 days for a monthly or annual membership. And if you like it, we'd be very grateful to have you. Make sure that you watch Nathan Gita on Mountain Standard Time tomorrow. That begins at 10 o'clock Alberta or 9 o'clock BC time. You could check him out. Also, the same time on Friday will be Corey Morgan on, of course, the Corey Morgan Show. Wouldn't be the same without you. Make sure you check it out. It'll be a great time. Thank you very much for joining us. God bless.